I was wrong about the in-season tournament. I was wrong. Off the air, I've been on record saying that this is not a good idea and that this is not a good addition to the NBA, mainly because I just didn't quite fully understand it. And I think that's true for a lot of NBA fans. Over the summertime, a lot of analysts and a lot of media outlets have been comparing this setup to what soccer does over in Europe. And this idea of an in-season tournament was is not really a thing in within our major sports here in the United States. So wrapping my mind around implementing a pool play into a bracket play, all intertwining into the flow of a regular season felt impossible to me, to be honest. And it felt like it wouldn't work. And moving past this initial skepticism, I thought about the players as well. If the players don't care about this, why should I care about this? As a fan, why should I care about my team raising an in season tournament banner when throughout all of history, the only thing that has mattered is winning a championship in June? And to kind of go along with that, I also worried about players with their load management. Over the past 10 years, we've seen a great spike in players sitting out of games. Almost nobody wants to play a full 82 game slate anymore. And if you make the championship of this tournament, you play an 83rd game, you play one extra game. And if players don't want to play a full season, why would they be interested in playing an extra game that doesn't count towards the regular season standings other than the $500,000 incentive? I just didn't see why players would want to play an extra game if they didn't have to. And I was also worried about players sitting out of pool play or even bracket play games. I was worried about star players sitting for load management when this is supposed to be this spectacle and this new thing that matters. And if we saw players sitting out during these, it would make for a very, very bad product to watch. And I'm glad that we haven't seen that, but this was a worry that I had when it was announced. And after all this, I saw the courts that they came up with, and I honestly thought they were a joke. I thought it was a joke that I saw. The courts are still very bad. I was wrong about the in-season tournament. I am not wrong about the courts. The courts are still horrible. The stripe down the middle with the fluorescent outside, like the Lakers court with their bright yellow, is an eyesore to look at. I was watching the Pacers and Celtics game the other day, and the Pacers bright blue court looks like a 7-Eleven Slurpee. The courts are still very, very bad. So moving forward, I'd like to see that changed. But anyways, this just did not resemble the NBA that I grew up with, and it wasn't the NBA that I was used to watching. And throughout Adam Silver's tenure, I feel like I haven't really reacted that well to change. I didn't really like all his all-star changes with the drafting and getting rid of the East and West, now going back to East and West and changing the scoring format. It just wasn't what I was used to seeing and the NBA that I knew and loved growing up. And it was a weird change for me and tough to wrap my mind around. And then we got into pool play. And when we got into pool play, I started to warm up to the format as I began watching. It was a fun twist seeing players score until the final buzzer. We got to watch in like a 12-point game. We got to watch a full 48 minutes of basketball, which is something that we don't really get to see. Players trying until the final buzzer and seeing star players in when a team is up 17 points. And the best thing for me was kind of getting rid of that unwritten rule, as if you're up by so much at the end of a game, you're not allowed to score, and if you do, the other team gets really mad at you. So seeing that unwritten rule temporarily being pushed to the side was really, really nice. And watching a full 48 minutes was a good change for the NBA. And what really kind of shifted my mindset for me was I actually went to the Bulls and Celtics in season tournament game. It was the last game of pool play for the Celtics and the Bulls as well. And the Celtics were pretty much all but dead going into that game. They probably were not moving on to the bracket play of the in-season tournament unless they beat the Bulls by 23 points, which they did. And while watching the game going into it, every fan in the stadium knew that there was this target number of 23 points that the Celtics were chasing. And in the first, second quarter, I found myself peeking at the scoreboard. I was in the second quarter. I was like, okay, Celtics are up 12. Got to keep our foot on the gas. Got to get to that 23-point win so we can move on. And this was something new for me. I was into it subconsciously. I was looking at the scoreboard. This was something I cared about. And moving into the fourth quarter, the Celtics were doing the hack of Drummond, putting him on the line, putting a bad free throw shooter on the line so they can get the ball back. They were leaving their stars in the game. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown stayed in the game much longer than DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, even though that they were up by a lot in that game. It was clear that they cared about hitting that 23-point mark. And seeing the players care was great for the fans because all the fans were into it, and where all the fans were into it and wanting to win by 23 to move on into the bracket play. And then moving into bracket play, watching these games the past 2 days, the crowds have been absolutely electric. Especially the Pacers and the Kings crowds. Their fans have been amazing, and it has felt like a mini playoff atmosphere is what I'll call it. There were during big moments or towards the end of the game when a big three goes up, you could feel the anticipation within the crowd, and that if it goes in, you can just tell that the entire stadium is going to crumble. And that's my favorite part about playoff basketball. This wasn't quite playoff basketball, but it was a slight taste in December, and I think that it's a really good thing for the NBA. And watching these games, I thought there was a much higher defensive intensity than compared to the regular season games, mainly because it is single elimination. That's what I'm going to attribute it to. And I believe that 4 out of the 8 teams were under their season average of scoring, and a fifth team was right at their scoring average. Now, correlation does not equal causation, but I think that there was a higher defensive intensity, and I was impressed with the refs as well. I thought there were tighter whistles. There was less ticky tack fouls. There was less There was less like foul baiting and giving into that foul baiting. So I thought there was tighter whistles and higher defensive intensity, which greatly increased the watchability of these games. And the other thing I noticed was that players were really getting into this. They were getting into this single elimination format. Like, for example, in the Lakers game yesterday, Austin Reeves they were up 1, hit a very big three with a couple seconds left to put them up 4. And he was very animated, very excited, very emotional, let out a big scream, which was great to see. In the Pacers and Celtics game, I believe it was around like 2 minutes, maybe 2.5 minutes left in the game. It was like a 2 or 3 point game at the time, but Aaron Nesmith got a bucket on Derek White, and he gave him the too little celebration, and they were going back down the other end, and they were jawing at each other the entire way. And it was great to see as a fan. It made me lean forward and actually really get into the game and kind of create this narrative of a little bit of a rivalry. And with the Pacers beating the Celtics, I'm a Celtics fan. With the Pacers beating the Celtics and knocking them out of the in-season tournament, as a Celtics fan, I want to see the Pacers again. I want to see the Pacers in April in the playoffs. You beat us in a single elimination. Let's see if you can beat us in 7. Win 4 games against us. I want to see the Pacers again. This is creating a little bit of a rivalry, I feel like, as well. And this in-season tournament format with the single elimination and the bracket play is amazing for fans of young teams or fans of teams that aren't quite contenders, because the Pacers are a perfect example for this. If you're a Pacers fan, what have you been able to get excited about recently with the Indiana Pacers? Not much. And the last thing that you were really probably truly excited about was 2018 when they took LeBron to 7 games. They eventually lost, but that was the first round of the playoffs. In the past 5 years, that's the only thing that you really have to hang your hat on. Going back even further, probably 2014, the Pacers were 1 game away from the finals, and they lost against the Heat and LeBron again in that series. So in the past 10 years, you really haven't had much to cheer on. And now you won a big game in your home stadium, and you're moving on to the next round of single elimination bracket play. And it felt like a playoff basketball game in Indiana. It really did. It wasn't quite playoff basketball, but it also wasn't regular season. And seeing these teams in a high leverage moment was fun. Seeing them in a close game, and a game that mattered more than just a regular season game, was a lot of fun. And seeing a young team play well, this is a good watch. This is good for the NBA, and having games matter now is great. And it did seem like the players cared. The Celtics were down like 7 or 8 points with seconds to go in the game, and they were still fouling, trying to get the ball back. In a regular season game, they probably just let the other team dribble out the clock and hit the showers and go home. If this is what we are seeing, if this is the level of involvement and the level of interest from the players that we are seeing every single night in the in-season tournament, this is 100% going to matter in the future. This is going to get better, and this will be a staple in within future NBA seasons. And making what this does is make games matter in November and December, which is fantastic for the NBA, and is fantastic if you're a fan of watching the NBA in November and December, because a lot of more casual fans, or even just fans in general, don't really consider the NBA season starting until Christmas. A lot of fans don't tune in until Christmas, and making games matter in November and December is great for the league. It's great for the players. It's great for the fans. And this is all great, but I am still a little bit skeptical about the in-season tournament moving forward. All of what I just said completely applies. The fans were great, and the crowds were amazing, and the players were super into it. And my question is, why do you take that away? Why are we taking away these amazing semi-playoff like atmospheres away from these games? The last two rounds, the semifinal and the final, are both in neutral locations. They're all in Vegas, but it's going to be played at a neutral site. The first round was a major success, and now you're just taking the home crowd out of it, who have been super involved and super amazing. And I don't know if they're going for like a March Madness style vibe of the Final Four or what, with like with a neutral playing ground and fans of all over coming in. But my worry about this is that the turnout and the participation of the fans is going, especially with it being in Vegas, is that it's going to be heavily dictated by sports gambling. And players already hate the rise in sports gambling, especially within the NBA. You see it all the time in Twitter altercations about players telling fans that they don't care about their bets, that they don't care about that their lines or their over unders or whatever it may be. And I worry that it being in Vegas is that there's just going to be such an emphasis on all these betting margins that it could turn the players off in a way. And that's my only worry and my concern moving forward, other than just taking the home fans out of it. But otherwise, I'm very excited to see how the semifinal and the final play out, because I think the first round has been a great success for the league, and a great success for the NBA, a great success for the players, and a great success for the fans. This has been very watchable to me, at least, and I'm excited to see how it plays out moving forward.